Hello, everyone. So, I wanted to do a reading wrap up for the month of September. These are the books that I finished this month. The first book I read was Putin Country, A Journey into the Real Russia by Anne Garrels. This is actually a reread for me. I read this book a couple years ago. It came out in 2016, so it was a lot more current the first time I read it. But this book is amazing. It's a very kind of a sordid, morbid look into Russia. In the last, I guess she's a journalist. Anne Garrels is a journalist who works for NPR, and she travels to this part of Russia. Let's see if it tells me right on the back. Chelyabinsk. So that's a city in Russia, and that's where she travels to, and she kind of interviews the people and gives kind of an honest look at what's going on and how people feel about their state. So I found this very valuable. This is one of the better books on the state of Russia that I've read recently. I also finished Confidence Man by Maggie Haberman. This is a fairly new book, so I wanted to read something more recent on Donald Trump, and this book was very comprehensive and it kind of goes through his history, his childhood, his family, and also up to the defeat, his last presidential defeat. So I really enjoyed this book. It kind of encouraged me to get rid of some of the older Donald Trump books that I have that I don't really need anymore. This is a very well written, I guess it's a bit biased. I guess Maggie Haberman isn't a Republican. I think she's a Democrat. But I did find a lot of value in this book. It was, I don't know if I should hold on to it and reread it. I don't know if I'm going to go ahead and read all my Donald Trump books again. I guess it depends on what happens during this presidential election. The next book I finished was The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and this book I decided to reread, and I think I read it a couple times in high school. I think 3 times, because I kept switching schools, and every time I got into a new high school, they were reading this book. So I decided to reread this book because I read James by Percival Everett, which is, I think, the main contender for the Booker Prize this year. And I really wanted to read this after finishing that, just to kind of see what that book was based off and remind myself. And it was very strange. I liked most of it a lot. I loved the beginning. I loved the beginning was amazing. I was really engrossed in this book. And then the middle was fascinating. And then the end was just infuriating. So I think up until they get to Tom Sawyer's aunt, where Huckleberry Finn pretends to be Tom Sawyer, and then Tom Sawyer shows up. All after that, the book just, for me, goes off the rails. I couldn't stand it. I was kind of angry and upset because what they do is they start exploring various book scenarios and like literary scenarios of freeing prisoners and prisoner fantasy, and they're all trying to mess around with Jim and kind of use his life as to play out their little games. And, Huckleberry Finn wants to free Jim, and Tom Sawyer wants to mess around and play games with him. And I guess Huckleberry Finn kind of lets him do it. And that part really ruined the book for me and made me really not want to. I can kind of see why Percival Everett wrote James, maybe as a response to that horrible scenario. So it was good for me to reread this, but I don't think I'm going to read this again. I think I'm done. 4 times is enough for this book. Another book I finally finished was John le Carré's The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. This book was very difficult for me. I'm just not really, I don't really understand spy thrillers. I tried James Bond. I didn't enjoy it. So this book was very hard for me to get through. I liked parts of it, but a lot of it was kind of almost incomprehensible to me. So instead of giving up, I decided to get myself a brand new, really fancy copy of this book. And I got rid of the old copy that I had. So I am going to reread this book. I am going to try again because I know this book is extremely valuable and maybe one of the highest rated books of all time. Not highest rated, but most revered books of all time. So the people who love this book say it's one of the best spy novels of all time, including Graham Greene. It says right here, one of the best spy stories I've ever read. So yes, I want to give this book another chance. I do want to do this one more time. Another book I finished was The Brothers, The Road to an American Tragedy. This is a book by Masha Gessen, and I've read multiple books by her, and I really enjoyed them. This book was a bit odd. This is the story of the Boston bombers, the two brothers from Chechnya. And it's really just their story, their family, their history. And she goes really deep into the Chechnyan community and what effect the Boston bombing had on the Chechnyan community. This book was extremely depressing and infuriating and heartbreaking. It doesn't really give any answers as to why these two boys committed the bombings, or as Masha Gessen hints, maybe they didn't commit the bombings. Maybe they were framed. Who knows? There's a lot of speculation in this book. There are really no answers. I did study terrorism in college, so I was interested kind of to see a profile of these terrorists. But there really was no answer in their history as to why they did what they did. So this book left me more confused than it left me kind of depressed and confused. And I don't know. I don't think I want to read this book again. This was an odd book. I finally finished White Oleander. This book has been on my reading list for years, and I was kind of scared to pick it up because I knew vaguely what the story was, and it was great. It was really great. It was beautiful. The book was so poetic, so well written. I really enjoyed the process of reading it. But in the end, do I want to read this again? I don't. I don't want to read it again. It was very sad. I read a lot of very depressing books this month. Maybe that's why I'm not feeling very happy right now. So yeah, I need to read something happy. Wow. Yeah, I'm just thinking back. Yeah, this book is depressing. I don't think I want to read it again. I think one time is enough, but it is an incredibly beautifully written book. Another extremely depressing book I read was Citizen, an American Lyric. This is more poetry. This book is beautiful. It's a very well done piece of work. It's also very short, but it did take me a long time to get through it. It took me actually 3 days to get through this very, very quick book, just because I kept rereading parts of it. It's extremely well done. This is definitely something I'm going to hold on to and reread. It's all about racism and really going deep and understanding it through poetry. And yeah, I highly recommend this book. And this book I have because I think it was recommended by some list. I'm possibly The Guardian. So I don't really remember though, but that's why I have it. I finished How to Practice: The Way to a Meaningful Life. I really enjoy books on Buddhism and spiritual guidance, but this book just was not it for me. This was, and I did just finish a very long book by the Dalai Lama, his happiness book, and this book was odd. It was like more like a guide, but it had a lot of aspects that I don't need. So I'm just gonna let this one go. It went a little. It said some pretty insane things that maybe make sense to practicing Buddhists, but to me, as someone who's just using these books as a guidance for my own mental health, it's not necessary. There are so many good books that I can use instead of this one. I've reread The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, and I love this book. This book was great. I read it a couple years ago, and I didn't really feel it at the time, but this time I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a really great follow-up to the first book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I had a really great time with this one, and I'm looking forward to just continuing the series and reading the rest of them and kind of taking more time and enjoying them because they are so much fun. I finished Subliminal: How Your Unconscious Mind Rules Your Behavior by Leonard Moldovin. I can't even say his name. Moldinov. I read his other book, The Drunkard's Walk, many years ago, and it's time for me to reread that. This book had a lot of very good information in it, but I had a hard time really vibing with it, so I'm going to have to read this one again. I think there's a lot of good stuff in here that I think I need to just read a little more carefully and maybe focus on a little more. So this is a reread for me, definitely. And then finally, yesterday, I finished White Holes by Carlo Rovelli. This book, I'm not a big fan of Carlo Rovelli, even though I have all his books and I've read all his books. This is his newest one. I did love 7 Brief Lessons on Physics, and that book actually came up in the Guardian's best book list. But this one, this is weird. I feel like this entire book could have been one chapter, maybe like a Wikipedia article. In this book, he speculates, and I'm not sure how much of this is speculation or real science or a hypothesis, but he's saying white holes are what black holes turn into after they use up the event horizon of so his whole argument is that these white holes are kind of maybe what cause all that matter that we cannot see in the universe that makes up the entire amount of matter. And there's just so much philosophy in this book that I didn't really enjoy. I don't really like reading philosophy when I'm trying to read a science book. And I feel like there's so little science in this book that the majority was philosophy. If I take everything that I highlighted or underlined in this book, I don't think it really was that much. It was a very quick book. It was like less than 150 pages, but I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to hold on to it. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do some more research on white holes. It's an interesting concept. Let me just summarize his conclusion, which I kind of saw it coming. But he's saying that, let's see, where's his... He's saying he believes that what makes up the dark matter in the universe is just the remnants of black holes that have turned into white holes. So I don't know. I kind of saw this conclusion coming from about halfway through the book, but I don't know. It's funny. He actually talks about people who don't like his books in this book. He has a whole chapter for people who don't like his books. People like me, I guess. Middle people. He says he writes these books either for people who know all the science or people who don't know any of the science. But then the people who know some of the science and want to know more, the students, they're the ones who don't like his books. And that's really funny because that's exactly how I feel. But I guess I'm just going to continue reading his books as they come out. He is the proponent of quantum loop gravity, which is my favorite physics theory. So I just wish his books were less philosophical and more scientific. And then I did just get 2 books in the mail from Goodreads. These came today. I got Targeted Beirut by Jack Carr. And I got Shred Sisters by Betsy Lerner. So these just came in, and I just wanted to acknowledge them and thank you to Goodreads for sending me more books. I'm really looking forward to reading them. Very interested in Beirut. Anyway, so hopefully I'll have a happier month in the month of October, and I'll read some fun, exciting books that'll kind of cheer me up and put me in a better mood. Thank you for watching.